All right, guys, I did my presentation on how to incorporate a barefoot training aspect into your workout, whether it be, training or I shot for more of the dynamic warm-up, how to implement that into my dynamic warm-up. Next slide, Ryan. What are we talking about? Basically what I just said, incorporating no shoes during training sessions and/or a dynamic warm-up. Next slide, please. Why do we want to do no shoes? One, injury prevention, which I think is the main aspect of strength and conditioning, keeping your guys healthy on the field, etc. Increased ankle stability, which also will lead to injury prevention. If you have increased strength in ankles, then you're going to have increased strength in your hips and knees as well. And like I said prior, ultimately keep your athletes on the field. And this is kind of just a little picture I found, a gist of pros and cons of running barefoot and shoes. But next slide, please. All right, how? The theory states that without supportive shoes, that the foot is forced to use muscles it otherwise would neglect, because the shoe kind of hinders movement of our ankles the way that it's naturally supposed to be. When shoeless, the foot works in a natural way, like it's ideally meant to be, which maximizes proprioceptive feedback, which I think you talked about that. Brian, did you talk about that? All right, and basically what that is that is our body knowing what each body part is doing at any given time. So basically, the more sensors that you have in a certain part of your body, then that's going to get more signals from your brain, and allows you to know what that part is doing. And your feet have a very high amount of proprioceptors, along with your face and your hand. I think are the other two parts of your body which have the most proprioceptors in them. Exposing your feet to the ground without shoe support will force your CNS to work more to accommodate the additional balance demands and positional changes that are happening. And a good point I found was that imagine how dull your sense of touch would be if you were to wear, a pair of gloves on your hands throughout the day. And then you took them off in the evening, and just how dull that sense of touch would be. Same concept applies to your feet. Next slide, Ryan. Wearing a shoe does immobilize the foot and ankle, which allows certain muscles to weaken over a given period of time. But without a shoe, the foot moves freely. Pressure is dispersed evenly among the foot, causing more muscles to be recruited in order to grab the ground underneath you. So it ultimately incorporates more muscles throughout the rest of the body, and the more muscles that are used, the stronger something will be. And it's basically common sense. You guys walk around barefooted, and if you try to balance or try to do any sort of movement without shoes on, you can kind of feel all those little intricate muscles that are firing around there. And so it makes pretty good sense that if you are shoeless, then all those muscles are firing, and they're going to get stronger, and therefore have a stronger ankle. Next slide, Ryan. This kind of got away from what I wanted to specifically talk about. These next couple slides are more focusing on barefoot running as opposed to just doing a warm-up. And if you have shoes on and you're running, your shoes are cushioned, they're padded, et cetera, so when you're running, it is going to cause you to land on that hill, and the half heel strike. All right, the negative parts to that is that, next slide, Ryan, I'm sorry. The negative aspects of that is that when you are striking your heel, you're going to have more force that's shooting through your leg, through your ankles, through your knees, through your hips. And biomechanically, it makes sense that we do land on the midfoot or the ball of your foot while you're running. And a few points on heel striking. It displaces the limbs and trunk in relation to our center of mass. Heel striking allows for excessive ground force to travel through the leg, which I was just talking about. And an absence of glute firing when you run and strike the heel. And I read a few researches that shows that a majority of hamstring tears, hamstring injuries, pulls, and stuff like that are derived from athletes that when they do run, they have more of a strike on their heels as opposed to naturally on the ball of the foot. Next slide, Ryan. And also, you can incorporate a few exercises in the weight room, which would also help the ankle stability. The only problem with that is that it would have to be in a highly monitored setting. Obviously, if we go down there with our guys and try to do, some lunges, step-ups, good mornings, etc. Any sort of exercise is going to require balance. If we go down there and try to do it with our guys, then we got 60, 70 guys running down there, and injuries bound to happen. You know, you can incorporate this aspect more of a one-on-one training session. You know, there's a few guys that I watch YouTube clips on who were training, you know, like London Fletcher in the NFL, Luau Deng in the Chicago Bulls. When they were doing their one-on-one trainings, you know, the guy that was training them, he was, you know, all the exercises they were doing, he was doing it barefoot. You know, you can monitor that in that type of setting because obviously if you have 60 guys running around down there, it's somebody's not going to be watching, somebody's not going to be paying attention, weight slams on the foot, bam, there you go. So that is a drawback to that aspect. Next slide, Ryan. All right, and my point is that through all this research is I would like to incorporate it into my dynamic warm-up. And this right here is an example of what I would do, you know, just a short example of some exercises I would do in my dynamic warm-up. Just to bring me back to a previous point, it gets your CNS firing a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, have to recruit more muscles. And so that's just a little example right there. Next slide, Ryan. All right, facilities. This is a problem that you would run into, say, if you were, you know, at an institution that didn't have the funding that an SEC type school has, or if you were a high school coach and you didn't have the facilities that, you know, the big football schools in Texas or whatever have. Preferably, you want to do this on a field turf setting, obviously, because it gives a little bit, it's cushioned, you know, so it's not hard on impact when you are running. A grass field would suffice as well, because you do have a little bit of a give in that. And if you have access to a sand pit, you know, like in the school I was at previously, we did, you know, around our practice field we had tracks and we had a few sand volleyball courts, you know, that were for intramural use. But we would use those with some agility drills, you know, etc., stuff like that. And so if you have access to that, that would be a good thing. And no hard surfaces. Obviously, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that you don't want to go out on the concrete and do a dynamic warm-up barefoot. You know what I mean? That's just asking for trouble. Next slide, Ryan. And so basically the conclusion, the gist of everything is you have no shoes, then the foot is free to move naturally like it's meant to do. If that happens, you fire more muscles throughout your ankle, all right, which is going to get all those little stabilizer muscles in and around your ankle stronger. If you have stronger muscles in your ankle, you're going to have stronger knees, stronger hips, all right? If you have stronger ankles, stronger knees, and hips, you're going to lower that athlete's chance of injury, theoretically, all right? And if you lower that chance of injury for the athlete, you're going to have healthier athletes, which in any sport, as a coach, healthier athletes means more wins. More wins, you keep your job. Everybody's happy. Next slide, Ryan. That's just a reference page if you know, you guys want to do a little bit of research on your own about it. So, any questions? Any issues, anything? Good stuff.